Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Oh, that was so beautiful. And the truth in it, no answer but God. So if that's true, why do we need to keep coming back here? We've got the answer. But I think it's sometimes because we say it like, but God. Maybe we've been saying that a little bit this week. So Reverend Michael will be back next week. He kicked off our Power of Now series last week. This was planned time off, so he's alive and well, I can assure you. And one of the things that he talked about last week as we began this discovery of the power of now is the idea that we are not the mind. Yes, we have a mind. It's a wonderful tool, but we are not the mind. And I loved when he talked about, I invite you to go back and watch this talk if you didn't see it. He talked about the difference between having a sound mind and a mind that makes a lot of sounds. And my mind sure has been making a lot of sounds, particularly this week. I can relate to that with everything that's been going on here. And so Eckhart Tolle talks about this idea that it's not that the mind is a problem. We use the mind. We need the mind. The problem kicks in is that when we think that we are the mind, when we get wrapped up in all these thoughts, we think we have to follow every single one of them. We confuse our identity with what the mind says we are, and it creates a lot of suffering. In fact, a vast amount of human suffering can be traced back to somebody having a thought of separation, a thought that they needed to make something out here was the problem and they needed to fix it. Or that they themselves were a problem and they didn't know what to do with that, so they acted out in unhelpful ways. So Eckhart says, and I love him because he's very blunt, and he has a very droll sense of humor, and he says, well, if you want to stop this, free yourself from suffering, just end the delusion of time. That's all you have to do. So, I mean, in your to-do list and in your day-to-day life, just go ahead and end the delusion of time. And if y'all know how to do that, go ahead and tell me because I would love to know. As I was online the other day and I saw somebody had posted a picture of a sign. It was a meme and it said, interested in time travel? Meet me here last Thursday. I wasn't sure. So that's what it feels like. Ending the delusion of time would be as simple as meeting somebody here last Thursday. But Eckhart does talk about that there are two different types of time, according to him. There's clock time and there's psychological time. In clock time, we need clock time. Some of us love clock time. This is how we plan. This is how we know to be here at 11 o'clock today. This is how we can set goals and predict how long things are going to take us to do things, do activities. It helps us organize. And some of us are really in love with clock time, and some of us feel a little more free to interpret it, and those two groups typically annoy one another. So clock time, there's no problem with that, but often what can happen when we get immersed in clock time, it can kind of start migrating over into psychological time. And what psychological time, as Eckhart describes it, is the mind's need to get out of the now. It's very uncomfortable in the now, this mind mechanism that Eckhart calls the ego. Ego can be a little confusing because different teachings describe it differently. So I'm going to use the word the mind mechanism here because that's not ambiguous, is it? But anyway, this mind mechanism that you might call the ego, it can't relax in the now. Because this mechanism wants there to be something to solve, a problem to solve. So what this mind does is it either points to your past, and there's something in the past that happened that is preventing me from being happy now, or something in the past that was so great that if I could just get back to that time, then I could be happy now. Okay, if that doesn't work, the mind will say, well, in the future, In the future, if this happens, then I will be fulfilled, then I will feel complete, then I can relax and I will have arrived. And there's nothing wrong with hoping for a better future. But what the mind loves to do is wrap all that into reasons why you can't just be happy right now. Because there's no content right now for it to latch a hold of. The mind loves to make problems of things because it's good at solving problems sometimes. Not when it works on its own, and it will tend to do that. So Eckhart talks about the psychological time and how can we recognize it in ourselves. He talks about there are two types of unconsciousness that we kind of inhabit in our daily lives. One is ordinary unconsciousness. And I know some of you are saying, I'm not ordinary, I don't want that one. Well, the other one is deep unconsciousness, so you really don't want that one either. But ordinary unconsciousness is one way to describe it. It's what is percolating underneath the scenes of our daily life. A little anxiety, perhaps, worry, a little of that feeling that you may be having a great day. Have you ever had a great day and you're like, but wait a minute, it feels too great. I might be forgetting something here. I must have forgotten to do something. Or then your phone dings, you're like, oh, that'll be it. That's what I knew it was going too well. So this ordinary unconsciousness is this in the background running, kind of an anxiety feeling, sometimes just a little bit of unease, trying to keep us on our toes. You ever practice worry? You know, when you worry about something, you're in training for a thing in case it happens. Because then when it happens, it won't be that bad because you've already worried about it, right? Well, hate to tell you, every time you've worried about it, it's as if the thing happened. The stress that you would feel, the anxiousness that you would feel, the sadness that you would feel when it happened, you've now lived through it several times. Sometimes it never even happens, and you've done all that training for nothing. And then sometimes it happens, you're like, oh wait, I still got to feel all that stuff anyway. None of that training did me any good. So that's the ordinary, and you might notice one of the things that he talks about, and I thought, oh, I recognize that from this week. For those of us that lost power, you know, there's sounds in your home, your appliances, your AC, praise God for AC, all that, and you don't even notice it because they're happening all the time. That's what your house sounds like at its quiet place. But when all that goes away, there's a new level of quiet. You suddenly realize, oh, I thought there were no sounds before, but this is really quiet. And it's the same thing with our minds. There's when they want to be in the past or in the future, and you can just look at this within yourself. Notice and observe, and all the things that we say about the mind today, these aren't judgments or making anybody wrong. These are considered normal behavior. That we are constantly looking out for what's the next thing, constantly trying to reach back in the past. Did we learn all the lessons we needed to learn back there? But what happens is we drag past that we don't need into this present moment, and we are already in the future. And when we get to the future, guess what? Now it's the now. So when you do have a goal or something that you want to achieve, whatever consciousness you have, like, I've got to get there, I've got to get there. When you arrive there, now what happens? That consciousness is still there because now you're wanting to get to the next place and the next place because it just doesn't satisfy. And advertisers know this. Advertisers live off of this. This is part of what's created our consumer culture now is because if you have a problem, they've got a solution. And if you don't know you have a problem, they'll invent a problem for you to buy something. I had a birthday last month, and this may be a coincidence, but right around the time of this birthday and ever since, there have been a lot of cosmetic companies very concerned about the aging appearance of my neck. They are worried about me, y'all. This is something that I didn't know I was supposed to be worried about. Frankly, I didn't know I had this problem. Thank goodness they figured it out. And they are able to provide me with products that will help my neck because I was just going to walk around here with a 50-year-old looking neck. Now my only concern is my neck's going to look 30, but the rest of from here up, I'm still going to look 50. So I'm just going to have to keep buying something. And that's the way it works. That's a silly example, but that's the way the mind works with everything. Okay, get this, check, get that. Yeah, that made me feel good for a second. Okay, let me move on to the next thing. It seeks to seek and never find. That's what the Course in Miracles says. The ego's job is to seek and never find. But we keep thinking the next thing will be the thing that we can just kind of, Or if somebody else has something, that gets us sometimes too, right? So Michael last week talked about St. Google and getting information from St. Google. But I learned from the Muse last week, Our Lady of Gaga. And I was listening to Our Lady of Gaga one day, a song, A Million Reasons. I don't know if you remember that song. And I think it's a breakup song, but I was like, I don't know if I want to go Google, did Lady Gaga break up with somebody? I promise it's for a sermon. I don't know. I just felt a little like I don't want to be nosy there. So she talks about 100 million reasons to walk away. She's got 100 million reasons to walk away, but baby, she just needs one good one to stay. And so the mind will give you 100 million reasons why you can't be present right here, right now, why you can't be at peace. What you need 100 million things that you need to add to yourself or subtract from yourself to be at peace. But you only need one reason to ignore all that, only one reason to stay. And the reason, Rumi said it beautifully, and I didn't know this from Rumi until I read it in Power of Now, but he said that the past and future veil God from our sight. Burn them both up with fire. Rumi. Rumi and Gaga, that's a good team. If they would collaborate, that would be a good record, right? So how do we burn them up? It's the same thing in the delusion of time. How do we burn up past and future? Well, the first step is to notice. That's the easiest way. The moment you notice you are not present, you are present. Because who's noticing that you aren't present? If you are just caught up in the mind, getting here, doing this, arguing about this, feeling this stress, feeling this constriction, and you are fully in the story of it and believing it, you're just living it out. And we all do it to greater or lesser degrees at different times of our life. But when you question and you notice, wait a minute, I've left myself about 10 minutes ago. You ever get home after you've driven home and I don't remember one thing about the ride here? But that also happens in our day-to-day interactions. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and then realized, I wasn't listening to a thing they said? Because your mind was worried about something that you needed to do afterwards, or something they said triggered something in you. Whatever it was, you weren't there now. So if we want to notice our presence, that's all we have to simply do. Notice when you start, what does it feel like? What does it feel like when you're in meditation and you are feeling present? Or when you're sitting with a loved one or you're in nature, think of those times that you feel completely calm, completely at peace, that you don't need anything to be any different. What is it with the quality about that? It's not the content of the moment. We all can't sit under a tree all the time or only be with people that we, like all the time. Yes, we love everybody here, though. It's not about the content. It's about something in that moment in you was at home with yourself. So our job is then to notice when we are not at home with ourselves, when we've wandered off. Meister Eckhart, 13th century Christian mystic, he said, God's always at home. It is we who have gone for a walk. So when you notice yourself away from home, you come back home, simply, you can ask yourself some questions. Eckhart says to ask yourself the question, can I be at peace with this? How am I being? Notice what, he says, to be at least as interested as what's happening inside as you are about what's happening outside. Notice what's going on. Notice your mind will try to make up a story of why you can't be at peace. It has 1 million of those, 100 million of those. But instead, just see if you don't follow that story and just to say, what's going on here? And just simply breathe. Simply breathe, and that will anchor you into the present moment. Maybe even just briefly, but it's enough because you have opened up a dimension to the timeless. So if we can be at one with the present moment, and sometimes the present moment doesn't look great, right? Sometimes we're like, well, not this present moment, though. You can't tell me I'm supposed to be enjoying sitting in Houston in 100-degree temperatures with no air conditioning. I'm not going to tell you that. What I'm talking about the present moment isn't so much about the content of the moment. It's about the place where within you, you meet that which is eternal in you. And you rest in that place. And from that place, it's not an inactive place. You don't have to announce to everybody, okay, I'm going to get present now. You don't. That's not what it is. From that place arises joy, arises right action, arises wise solutions. So the other piece that I'd like to bring in, so we talk about the present moment and how it's important and it's beautiful, how the mind just wants to bypass it because everything else is more interesting than just being right here, right now. And there's you've all heard this phrase that I'm about to tell you, but there's different theories about where it came from. And one I found that said it was a legend from a Persian king who asked his council of wise people, his elders, his spiritual gurus, to come up with a phrase that he could use both when he was happy and when he was sad, that he could use when he liked what was happening and when he didn't like what was happening, and that this phrase would be just as effective for either. And the phrase is, this too shall pass away. So this too shall pass away. If I'm saying, well, let's honor the present moment, is this contradictory then to say this too shall pass away? If we contemplate and really get still with the idea that this too shall pass away, everything that we see in this world of form, all of our relationships, all of our roles, everything that we do, is that they become even more precious. Being with that and being in that becomes even more precious. But the tendency is to, when we don't like something, this too shall pass away, this too shall pass away. That's a beautiful mantra, and make it go away. That's not it. This too shall pass away. This is just something that has come, but not here to stay. I am more than this. I am the space that holds all this. I will watch it go and come. The trickier part is that this too shall pass away when things are good. That's not maybe a mantra we want to use when things are good. I think about when my kids were little. I used both. Either one of these was hard. Sometimes the this too shall pass. Oh my goodness, there were phases that could not pass quickly enough. I could not wait for them to be over. And then there were times as they were growing up that, oh my goodness, I would feel this overwhelming urge to want to freeze them right where they were. They were so precious and so beautiful. And life just felt so good to be with them. And here they are just growing up, and I had no control over it. And I remember one time, this was my youngest child, and he's quite independent. And he was 3. I love 3. 3 is such a beautiful age. They're not quite babies. They're really showing you their personality. They're hilarious. But he was standing in front of the mirror and brushing his hair. I came into the bedroom, and I saw him in the bathroom, and I had never seen him just doing that on his own. He was sitting there, and I got a lump in my throat. I said, oh my gosh, he's growing up so fast. My older son, 6 years older, I was like, oh, he's going to be in school just like Ethan. And they're both going to be gone. I mean, there goes my mind. I want to just keep this, my child is so sweet and innocent, and I love being with him. I want to freeze him like this. And I started crying. And just about that time, he turns and looks at me. It's so beautiful. And I was like, oh, this child can ask me for anything in this moment, and I will give it to him. I can tell you that. And he looks at me, and he says, Mommy. I said, yes, honey. He said, you look so weird when you cry. I think, pop that balloon real quick. But that's lessons that I got from being a parent and other things in life too, even the good things, the things that we love. When you're clinging and worried about losing them, you're not fully enjoying them. You're missing out on the beauty that's in this moment. Even when things seem challenging or difficult, I'm not saying you are going to be in love with every moment that you have, but there's an aliveness in it when you are willing to accept and lean into it. So I'd like to close today. Well, not quite close, but I would like to talk a little bit about the contents of your life. Don't worry, you don't have to tell me. Contents of your life. Yes, who would like to? Want to tell me all the stuff that you're worried about or that you worried about and didn't happen, or all your failures or successes, all the things you judge yourself? No one? Oh, okay. Anytime you can come up here. I don't have to know the contents. We don't have to know the contents of each other's lives, but it's helpful when we tell each other our stories. A healing can happen, to be seen. But also what is really very helpful is to hold each other beyond all of our conditions. And that's one of the things I think Unity does so well. If I come to you and I say I'm hurting, you don't have to tell me, you don't have to hurt. God's fine. God's all good. But God, Stacy. No, we can say, I see your suffering. And I know the truth of your wholeness, your completeness. I don't even have to say that out loud to you, but I can know that for you. And know that God is being revealed in, through, and as you, that the perfection of spirit, divine intelligence, is revealing itself in every circumstance. So that's one of the beautiful things that we get to do for one another in spiritual community. In John chapter 14, verse 27, Jesus said, "My peace I give to you. My peace I leave with you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you." And that's beautiful, the idea of peace. But what's critical and the most important is the follow-up sentence. Because he says, not as the world gives. That's exactly right. Not as the world gives. Because when we look for the world to give us a steady stream of peace, we can't help but suffer or be frustrated. Because it's not the world's job to give us a steady stream of peace, frankly. The world's job is to ebb and to flow and to forms appear and forms dissolve. And so does our roles within that world. But underneath all of that, we have a peace that's not as the world gives, a peace that cannot be taken away, a peace that includes and embraces all things. So I know it's been a tough week. It's still ongoing for many Houstonians. But I want to say this too. We were at a beautiful memorial service for one of our members yesterday. And I noticed in those conversations and some of the conversations I've had this week, such a tenderness in the way that people are being with one another. I see people being present with one another. You know, a lot of times you ask, how are you? But you're not really listening to what the answer is. I've seen people, how are you? And they really want to know. And just even that being able to be present with someone is so healing and such a gift. And I see it in all of you. And I see it out in the city as well. People arising to take care of people's needs and helping neighbors and enveloping people where they can. So you're wonderful. Thank you all for coming today. I would love to close this with a prayer. When we talk about time, Hafiz says that the breath is on God's time. The breath is the clock of God. Don't we want to be on God's time? And so I invite you right here, right now, to know that you are exactly in and on God's time. That whatever it is, whatever challenges you're facing, whatever you find yourself trying to navigate, just being human, that you are supported, that you are uplifted, that you are surrounded by the love of the infinite, by the vastness of all that is. That is what you are. So anything that you need to do, anything that you need to express, that you have come here to reveal, I know and affirm that you are completely resourced for that. I know and affirm that the goodness of the all is now revealing itself in every area of your life and in our world. That this is a community of peacemakers, a community that extends love out into the world and embraces all who find their way here. And in this way, we are healing and transforming ourselves and the world. And so it is. Amen. Thank you all so much for being here today. Love you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.